Hey guys, Mark here from Red Star, and today we are going to talk about our reward system and the reward system that we use here when we're training obedience. First, dog food recalls. There's just one new dog food recall, that's G&C raw dog and cat food. Okay, so if you guys feed that stuff, you're going to look at, they have products with their Pat's cat turkey cat food and 42-pound containers of ground lamb dog food. Listeria, again, ouch. Jeez. Okay, so G&C raw dog and cat food recall. This is in the raw foods, which is very interesting because raw food is definitely the most nutritious. We're going to have Alex on this week. We're going to talk about that a lot more. But today, we are going to talk about our reward system. And our reward system is basically a two-part deal. Within our reward system, we use marker training. And marker training, if you guys don't know, it's usually an audible sound that signals at that precise moment in time what the dog is doing is correct, and normally it will be rewarded. So there are cues before our rewards, okay? And it's a two-part process for us. So we use a verbal mark, which is okay. Normally we say it very short and staccato, not so wordy but more soundy, like okay kind of a thing. We use that as a one mark, and we also use a clicker, which I have right here, as another mark. Two different marks, and they mean two different things, but both of them mean what you're doing is correct. A reward is most likely coming to you. In the case of the clicker, sometimes that can change further along in the training as far as if the reward is coming to the dog at that moment. But the reason we have these two different markers is because we want to use one to let the dog know that it's doing the right thing, but it needs to stay in the behavior and keep doing the behavior. And later on, we might be stacking behaviors, so you might be putting one together with another. So we can use the clicker or the duration mark in that scenario. And then we also want to mark to release the dog from whatever it's doing. So we kind of came up with this clicker and the okay thing after I saw some dolphin trainers back in 2011 and saw what he was doing and thought, I'm going to try and mess with some of this stuff with the clicker. And then I learned also that Bart Ballone, I believe, uses a very similar system. So clicker for stay in behavior, verbal release, some type of other sound to release the dog from the behavior. And another thing I heard him say that's very smart is with the clicker or the duration or the stay in behavior mark, the reward is coming to the dog. With the release mark, the dog is free. It no longer has to stay in behavior, and it's free to come and get its reward. Okay, so there's a two-part thing. One, either click, the reward's coming to you. The other one, okay, the get up and come and get your reward from whatever you're doing. And we really like this system. Excuse me. We really like this system for mostly stay-type behaviors or extended, duration type behaviors, whether it's place or stay. And then later, when you get into more advanced training, we like to use it to stack behaviors together and keep a dog within a set of behaviors. When we're teaching the stay, the click is very easy for the dog to understand, and it learns, oh, okay, food's coming. In the beginning, we give a lot of food and often, when we're keeping the dog in the behavior. And then when we release, we always give more than one piece of food. So if you're going to look at the two don't function identically. The release reward, or the release mark, which is going to be okay in our scenario, okay, that kind of a thing, that is going to be a more profound, more powerful mark because the dog is released, obviously. So when you're done with work, you're done with work. Do you know what I mean? You're not still having to work. So it's kind of one of those deals. So if I'm in a pinch, I will always use, or not in a pinch, but if I'm like working something out with the dog and I feel like they got it right at that moment, or they move to a next step within the training, I'll always release the dog because it's a more valuable mark, okay, for the reward. Because again, the dog is free; they're getting more than one piece of food. So Clicker we really like because it helps clean everything up. The reason I like the clicker for the duration stuff is it's not to, when I'm doing stays, it helps the stay process tremendously, right? It's incredible how quickly I can teach a stay with a clicker now. But for me later on, when I start to stack or chain behaviors together, that's where I really like the clicker, because what ends up happening is when you start to stack or chain certain behaviors together, whether the dog's coming to front and then they're going to go to heel or something like that, we run into issues with anticipation. And once I hung out with that dolphin trainer and saw what he was doing, started to kind of use the same approach here. And so when I will click in between certain things, so if I tell the dog to front and he fronts, I'll click. I may or may not give him a piece of food, and then I can ask him another behavior. And he very clearly understands each step, and it helps me clean up all the little messes within behaviors. Okay, so it helps me compartmentalize to a great degree. And the click sound is a very distinct sound that means a very distinct thing. So the sound is never erroneous, right? Like sometimes with my voice, I try really hard to be consistent, as I've talked about before, but there is variance because I'm not a robot. I try, but I'm not. So with a clicker, that sound is always the same. It always means the same thing. It's very easy for the dog to understand. So, and then again with the OK stacked on top of that, then you've got the ability to balance these behaviors we're creating. Meaning when we're creating a behavior, teaching a dog to sit, stay, or something, I always want two things. I want integrity, like I want the dog to just pop into it, be really pumped to execute. And then I also want stability. Long-term, short-term, whatever. I want stability. When the dog sits, I want him to hold that sit until I release them. Okay, so with the clicker, that allows me to balance back and forth within training between creating intensity and creating stability. Okay, with a lot of quick releases, meaning like quick, okay, not asking for much duration, you're going to get a lot of intensity, right? But then you're going to lose a little bit of stability from those reps. So then you've got to move back to the clicker thing or whatever you're doing for stability, and you've got to work stability. For example, right now my own dog is anticipating jumps, just a touch. He's not doing it anything terribly, but I can see that he wants to jump before I give him the command to jump. So I have to put him on a place, and then I walk up to the jump and I simulate what I'm doing, and then I click, and he knows, oh, I got to stay here. And then I go back and I give him a piece of food and keep him on his place. Do you see what I mean? So I'm stabilizing that place before I release him for the jump. If I ever, not to get too technical, but if I ever get to a point where I feel like I've done too much stability, I'll back off on stability big time, and I'll approach it from a more free perspective where the dog's a little bit more stoked to do it. It just depends. See, I can balance these things out between the reps when I'm working with a clicker and the verbal release. And I address each one. While I said the verbal release is always going to, the verbal mark is always going to be more powerful, but I address each one very meticulously. And because of that, we end up with a really clean product. So what I'm going to show you here is a dog that I was working with last week. I just kind of pulled out the camera and started filming him because I was just starting to teach him some obedience things. I don't know much of what he knew, but it seems like he didn't know too much. So I ended up doing some stuff with place and doing some stuff with downs. And I was using the clicker and a verbal release. And it was pretty cool. So here's what that looked like. Okay, so here I am with Odin working the place. And places, you know, in this case it's an elevated dog bed. So you'll notice I'm clicking as soon as the dog gets on the place, and now I'm working some distance, moving around and just clicking, kind of randomly moving, showing him different pictures, I'll show him the front, which a lot of times can be provocative. The dog will want to come to you. Now I'm walking away where he's going to want to follow. See, the dog gets off the place thinking he should follow. I show him a hand gesture and click as soon as he gets back on, signifying to him that the hand gesture means stay on. Hopefully he figures this out. See, it's all about moment marking with this clicker when you're working duration or stability with these passive type exercises. So I just keep moving around, getting further and further, and each time I get the farthest, I go ahead and click right there and then come right back. See? Little hand gesture, get him back on. So it's very peaceful, conflict-free training when we're training obedience, teaching behaviors, and teaching him to stay on the place. Right? Trying to have the best time possible for both of us. So of course we're using motivation. So the other thing you can see is while I have food and he knows I have food and rewards, I'm not luring him onto the place. I just walk up to it and he gets on it. As soon as he gets on it, I click. See? So I'm clicking his good decision. And then I go ahead and go right back to working my distance. He gets up, he gets back on, I click, I give him food. It's very clear, very easy for the dog to understand this. Now he's going to sneak off again. Back on. Click. As soon as his foot hits the both feet are on the bed, I go ahead and click. Work a little more distance. Not much. Turn around closely. Click that. And I'll probably release him here. Yeah. So when I say okay, the dog knows he's released. He's free to come and get his reward. And after I give him, multiple pieces of food for the okay, you see me pet him, kind of love on him a little bit. That's when I go ahead and pet dogs. When we're training, is after they've completed whatever it is we're doing. So now you're going to see me do the same thing, take the same approach with the down. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pop him up because I don't want him down from a sit. I always want him to down from a stand. And now I'm going to go ahead, this is our second session. And I'm going to go ahead and start working my distance right away. So already in the second training session with Odin, I'm able to work stay behaviors from the clicker. Okay, coupled with the verbal release. So I'm going to work a little distance, come back, click, give food. I always click at the furthest point I walk. See there, he got up. I go ahead, show him a little gesture, he gets back down, I click. When I'm doing this, I watch for the elbows. When the elbow hits the ground, I click. Again, very clearly explaining to the dog what it is that I want them to do. He holds a position, then I go ahead and release reward with an okay. He's up, he's getting multiple pieces of food, it's a pretty good time. I'm going to touch him a little bit, most likely. Yeah. Telling him, okay, let's do something else, or let's do the same thing again. And here we go with another down. Do the lure. As soon as his butt hits the ground, you hear me click, and now I'm up to working some distance again. So you can see I can advance through this stuff really, really quickly. Now what happens here is very interesting, and this kind of is the reason we use this system. You see the dog just broke. He broke the down. He got up. And what I'm doing right now is I wasn't prepared with lure, with food, so I showed him a hand gesture that looked exactly like the gesture I showed him when I have food for the lure, and held it, and he laid down, meaning that in that rep I moved from a lure to a prompt in a sense. But you'll see me now go back to luring, because now I know, okay, it's on the horizon. Soon enough I'll ditch the food, do a prompt, then I'll be able to ditch the prompt, and he'll respond to just the command alone. So we're chugging right through this stuff. See, very conflict-free. He's having a great time. He's like, sure, dude, I'll lay here as long as you want. You just keep bringing me food. So you see, now I work over on the side, I get over there, and I'll release him. So it's very peaceful, very enjoyable for both the handler and the dog. Reward-based, obviously. We're creating behaviors. We always reward when we're creating behaviors. Use reward-based training. You see, it's just a great time. So that's how we work with the clicker when we're using it for duration and sustaining a certain behavior, mostly passive. Odin's a good boy. Okay, here we are with Chopin. This is my dog. He's about almost 2 years old, coming up on. So what you're going to see here is me use the clicker to keep him in behaviors. So I just commanded him a front. He got into front. I rewarded that. Click and reward. But he's still within his behaviors. He's not free. And now I asked him back to front. He got back to front. And I clicked probably and then released him. Okay, so I just asked him two things and released him. Now I told him get in. Oop, and the dog anticipates. He shoots out thinking front is going to be next. So now I ask him get in, do it again, and now I'm going to click that position instead of shooting him out of that position into another one, because he's already anticipating the front. So if I were to ask him to front, I'm only going to reinforce that anticipation. So instead, I use duration, keep him in it, and then I release him from it instead of trying to chain it to another behavior within that rep. Okay, now back to it. I'm probably going to ask him, there you go, front, click with some food. Now what, heel? Yep, there's heel. Click, no food, back to front, click, no food, get in, release. And interesting. So remember, I didn't release the dog from that. I released the dog from the in-between position because he was anticipating. That rep, I released the dog and he didn't even come out of my legs. Very interesting. Okay, so now he's just kind of getting pumped. I ask him to get into heel. There he is. And that time I just immediately released him for getting into the heel. I did not need to work duration. So you see, I'm able to toggle back and forth between duration and immediate releases in order to get maximum intensity and maximum stability. Okay, so now I'm healing. I'm going to turn. His head comes up. I click right at the point of the turn, and then I release him. See, so I kept him in it for half a second longer. I could have also just released him when he lost his head position and then regained his head position. Okay, so you can see it's a very, very peaceful way to train. So there you go. That was Odin and Chopin. Odin working on stability and Chopin chaining behaviors together. So you can kind of see how that works. If you guys haven't used a clicker, I would give it a go. Have a go. I would check it out. And for us, we keep the dog in behavior with it. There's a lot of people that release with it. I suppose it's like a debate between the two sides. But for us, this is the way we do it, and we have great results. And if you try this at home, you might even have enhanced results too, and see how quickly your dog can have maximum integrity and maximum stability simultaneously. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll be back again soon with Alex this week here talking about food, okay, and what you should feed your dog, or what you shouldn't feed your dog, something like that. So take care. Again, thanks for watching. www.red-star-kennel.com. Take care. Bye-bye.